The Enneagram, Type 5, the Thinker. Hello, this is Chris speaking. Wake up with a video about the Enneagram, starting with Type 5. The Enneagram is a spiritual psychological system probably founded by Gurdjieff, but actually comes from South America, where some Gurdjieff pupils have started the whole thing. We don't know much about the Enneagram from Ouspensky and Bennett, the two most popular students of Gurdjieff, and we don't know exactly where Gurdjieff got it from. But anyway, it's a helpful system of psychological archetypes. The further you are on your spiritual path, the less this disposition will play an important role. But this will only be at about Hawkins scale 700 or Spaldynamics Aubergine or Finder's scale location 10 plus. Before that, these personality types or archetypes or dispositions can still play an important role. And if you find yourself in one of these archetypes, it can be helpful to see if you're in the right direction, if you're regressing or if you're progressing. If you are the introverted, intellectual type, then you're most probably type 5. There are 9 types and type 5 is the thinker. Type 5 can notice that something is not right if he or she is either pulling back towards isolation or becomes kind of hyperactive and scattered. This is called disintegration. The main fear of type 5 is that they are helpless, incapable, or incompetent. Thus, they usually do everything to appear capable and competent. And since they're usually quite agile in intellectual matters, they usually choose a field of profession that allows to shine in intellectual pursuit, a university professor, for example. If this doesn't work, they manipulate others around themselves so that the others feel helpless, incompetent, stupid, and incapable. So that indirectly, again, they appear smarter than the rest. Type 5 archetypes are afraid of emotions. It's not that they can't feel emotions, they just don't trust them because they usually had some experience in the past that emotions are overwhelming and dangerous. Cannot be controlled like a tsunami. Thus, they tell themselves that they loathe emotions and that emotions have no values and prefer thoughts instead. Theoretical concepts, mental worlds, systems, constructs, theories. But emotionally, they are detached and aloof. Another big fear, which also leads to aloofness and also can cause the thing they fear, is that they have the delusion that they're never going to find a place for themselves in the world with other people. They want to, but they have kind of given up hope. And whenever you feel this happening in yourself, this is a red flag. Then you're seriously going into the wrong direction, into disintegration. You become an unhealthy 5, and thus you're losing touch with reality. And first you abandon others, or feel abandoned by others, and then you abandon yourself. Well, the healthy response to a crisis is to move towards number 8 archetype, which means you're assertive, and powerful, and strong. A natural leader. So this introvert, intellectual can become an extroverted leader. Or you can go in the wrong direction and become a reclusive, stuttering, scattered, confused idiot. So this has to do a lot with self-confidence. Either you're going the direction of self-confidence or self-doubt and self-abandonment. Fives like to collect things. They're collectors of knowledge, collectors of books, collectors of things, whatever, toys or whatnot. And can also be collectors of people. They're constantly afraid that they overexert themselves and lose energy. They think they have not enough energy, so they're very careful to use up this energy and not spend too much and crash. They have the fear that they crash if they use up too much of their energy, so they're always holding themselves back a little. This is called avarice. It's not an avarice of money, it's an avarice of energy and resources. It's a bit like Sherlock Holmes, who says that he doesn't want to spend any of his intellectual brain capacity, memory on useless things, on superficial things. He wants to save them for important things, which is BS, of course, because our memory capacity is unlimited, and as we know from stage magic, from mental magic, it can be trained to do all kinds of things by training. The more you remember, the more you force your memory to remember, the better it remembers. So there's no reason for brain avarice, for conserving memory function and intellectual capacity and energy, but that is the delusion of the type 5 that this is necessary. Also, there's the delusion that people are exhausting. A conversation with one or two is okay, but too many people are exhausting, or too long exposure to people is exhausting, so they avoid it. And if they overdo this, they drive themselves more and more into the unhealthy disintegration part of isolation. So what can we learn from this on the spiritual path? If you see yourself as a possible 5, as an introverted intellectual, then it is very necessary for you to spend as much time with people as possible and less time alone by yourself. Because what you want to nurture is this assertive, clear thinking, courageous leadership aspect of yourself, and not the confused, nutty professor archetype part of yourself. The last thing is that there are wings. You can have a 4-wing or 6-wing, the two neighboring archetypes that can also influence you being type 5. The type 4-wing is more creative and curious, a little bit less scientifically oriented and more emotional. So if you are an introverted, intellectual artist or architect maybe, then you may be a 5 with a 4-wing. While the 5 with a 6-wing is even more intellectual and even more analytical and scientific and technical. It can be more practical and even quite good with money and earning it. Type 5 can be confused with type 6 because type 6 can also be very intellectual, but it is more fear-based. Type 6 is very insecure and afraid and dependent, kind of. A pessimist full of mistrust. And the search for security can lead to being a scientist or an intellectual, and also to be more introverted and reclusive. So type 6 is afraid of losing friends, of losing his group, of being alone. While type 5 is not afraid of being alone. He wants to be alone. Type 6 has a large vested interest in social skills and social connections. Type 5 not so much. So as a type 5, you have to find a balance between your inner and outer world, and between how much time you spend with yourself and how much time you spend with others. Types 5 also have a large interest in psychology, especially in the so-called shadow of their own dark side. This is good, but it can be overdone as well. Many philosophers and psychologists have been archetype, Enneagram type 5. And of course there are lots of people on the spiritual path in type 5. Like Sri Aurobindo, for example. He probably transcended it at some point, but he had it strongly, and he spent the last 10 or 15 years of his life more or less by himself meditating. So there's this ascetic component also. Bilbo in The Lord of the Rings is a typical type 5. Other famous type 5s, Yogananda Paramahamsa, Lahiri Mahasaya, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Daniel Quinn, David Hawkins, Papaji, Sri Ramalingam, Henry David Thoreau, John Rawls, Douglas Adams, Leo Tolstoy, Steve Jobs, and many others. Okay, I hope this is helpful to you on your spiritual path. Keep a stiff upper lip. Thank you for my Patreons. Thank you for liking and subscribing and joining me on Patreon. Thank you for sharing the videos with your friends, and see you soon.